Hello and welcome to another edition of Brunswick Today. I'm Jeff Neidert. Today on our show, on our Speaking of Books segment, host Robin Bergstrom talks to Belva Plain about her novel, The Golden Cup. But first up on the show today, Janet Graham from the Ohio Cooperative Extension Service has a presentation on stress management. Stay tuned.
This is the Medina County Extension Update, brought to you by your local office of the Ohio State University Cooperative Extension Service.
Hi, I'm Janet Graham, County Extension Agent Home Economics with the Medina County Cooperative Extension Service. And today I have with me Cindy Orlasky, who's a clinical psychologist with Medina County Community Mental Health. Cindy, one thing we're always concerned about is, what is stress? Could you explain that to me?
Well, there's certainly been a lot written in the literature and in the newspapers lately about stress. And stress is actually a very individual response to things that impinge on us in the environment. They might be small events like daily hassles of getting your child off to school on time, or major life events like a divorce or the death of a family member. And our stress response is very individualized, and usually it affects our weakest link. Physically, that could be our stomach, and if there's chronic stress, we could develop ulcers. Psychologically, it could be perceived as anxiety, always feeling tense or uptight. And in some situations, if the stress continues for a long period of time, we can develop chronic conditions like psychologically depression or physically ulcers or even asthma.
You mentioned mostly unhappy events. Is that the only thing that causes stress, or do some of the happy events cause stress too?
Interestingly, when they developed stress scales, they found that it was important to include positive things like vacations and Christmases as well.
That's interesting. Which is worse on the body? Is it the one-time big stressor like a death in the family, or do those small, constant irritations like, you know, unable to get along with a coworker or something like that? Which is worse for us, Cindy?
Well, we used to believe that it was the major events and that we had to provide a lot of support for persons after they had a child with a serious illness, or after they were fired from a job, or were in an unemployment situation. And now we're finding through research that when we ask people to keep diaries of the daily events in their life that create stress, driving into work and having a flat tire, appliance breaking down at home, we're finding that that can create as much stress and have as much impact on changing a person's mood or physical symptoms for that person as the major events that we used to identify as stress-related.
Mm-hmm. You know, I just read in the paper not too long ago that the difference between a full-time working homemaker, or I should say a full-time homemaker and a working homemaker, that they found there was really more stress with the homemaker who is at home full-time. Are you finding a lot of research to corroborate this?
Well, not a lot, because we're changing our feelings about that, too. We used to think that women had it tougher because they were working women particularly, because they were expected to do things on the job and expected to carry on the bulk of the child care and the housekeeping tasks at home, too. And there was some research that even found that throughout the course of the week, that generally a man's stress level and their report of feeling good and feeling well-being, well, on Friday it would be the highest on the well-being and their stress would be the lowest, whereas on the working woman, they'd find that their stress was the highest on Friday. And when they asked them why, they said it was anticipation of all the things they had to do on Saturday morning around the house. And so we decided, well, gee, it seems that working women have these role conflicts and dual roles, and that creates more stress. Most recently, some women researchers, so we can sort of knock out the bias that males want women to feel better about doing everything, some female researchers have found that actually women who work outside the home have the opportunity to have more social interactions and to have some roles that they can feel good about, whereas if they're home alone or home with children and their husband, they're much more dependent on only receiving satisfaction from those two roles of mother and wife. And if those roles are not real satisfying, they're more vulnerable to feeling badly. So actually the woman that has more opportunities for positive experiences seems to be doing better.
That's interesting. What are some really good coping strategies for dealing with stress? I know all of us go through that from time to time. Could you give us some helpful hints, Cindy?
Okay, well, an obvious way is to try to structure your life so that you have more positive experiences and to try to eliminate some of the negative factors in our life. And sometimes that can be done. Sometimes it's possible to change a job that's very stressful, or sometimes it's necessary to get out of a marriage that might be extremely stressful over a long period of time. But other times we can change how we perceive the event. We can think differently about it. We can say, gee, there's a long line in the grocery store, and that's a terrible thing. I'm going to be late, and I'm wasting my time, and feel stressed. Or we can go through that line and say, gee, this gives me an opportunity to sort of look at the magazine along the way, or it gives me an opportunity just to collect my thoughts and maybe make some notes, carry along a little notebook to make a list of things that you want to do later, or just to relax a little bit and take a breather. The other thing is a quick relaxation technique is to do some deep breathing. And to do that, you would just breathe deeply through your nose and hold it for a few seconds and release the air through your mouth. And if you do that 3 or 4 times and take 5 seconds to hold the air in when you breathe in, that is a remarkable stress reduction technique that's very quick.
Could you show us, Cindy? I'm sort of interested. Could you demonstrate that for me so I better understand that?
Just to breathe in through your nose and hold it for 3, 4, 5 seconds and release through the mouth. And to do that 3 or 4 times, and your body will tend to relax.
Good. So when I'm sitting in the car and I'm stressed because the fellow in front of me isn't doing what I want him to do, maybe I can take some deep breathing.
Sure.
And that'll help relax. Or even think about it differently, right?
That's true, too.
And I'm trying to do that more, too. Because sometimes I get stressed when I'm driving or on the job and that sort of thing.
Another, to add to the breathing technique to make it even more powerful, is as you're exhaling in your mind, say the word relax or calm, so that you're actually training your body to associate that relaxed, calm state with that word in your mind. So that if you're sitting in a place where you can't be so obvious in a professional meeting or with a friend over lunch and you want to relax but you don't want to make it so obvious that you're doing some deep breathing, you can just in your mind tell yourself to relax, and that you will have trained yourself to give the bodily response to relaxation.
Good. Cindy, how do I know that I or somebody else might need professional help? What can I use as a guide to help me?
Okay, generally, if you're feeling overstressed, you would look for the same types of symptoms that you would if you're feeling any other psychological distress, of anxiety, depression. If you're feeling that it's getting beyond what you yourself can control, that you've tried some techniques, you've tried to change some things about your daily life, and you're still feeling that things are out of control and you aren't able to get a hold of that, then I think it's time to get some consultation. And that doesn't necessarily mean years of therapy. That may mean just a few meetings with someone to have an objective opinion about what you might be doing differently, or to fine-tune what you've already been trying to do to make yourself feel better.
Well, what about, let's say, one of my coworkers? What do I look for, Cindy? Maybe I need to give them a little suggestion about how they're feeling about things.
Okay, we look for things like irritability, that they're becoming increasingly cynical or irritable, critical of other people, feeling that there's no hope anymore and not real ambitious or enthusiastic. They might start coming in late for work or taking longer lunch hours. They might be telling you things like, gee, I'm just not feeling good anymore, or gee, I have a lot of headaches, telling you more about fights with friends, coworkers, family members, signs that they're just not functioning real well any longer.
Good. Okay, now I realize that they need help. Where can they go in Medina County for help, Cindy?
Okay, well, they have a variety of choices, and some of those are to go into the private sector, to social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, or counselors that are in the community, or, of course, our agency. And we're at Community Mental Health Services, and you would just call and say that you'd like to schedule an initial appointment.
Thank you.
Now, if you'd like more information concerning the services offered by the Medina County Board of Mental Health, you can give them a call at 225-7100. After this break, we'll be speaking of books.
I had a really strange experience today. I went to see a house that was advertised for rent, and when I knocked on the door, no one answered.
Were they expecting you?
Yes, I had an appointment, but as I walked down the drive, another lady went to the door and someone greeted her.
What happened then?
I came back and phoned them and was told the house was no longer available.
What? It sounds like you've been discriminated against.
Don't take no for an answer. Call the Discrimination Complaint Service, 621-4525 now.
Now it's time for Community Billboard, the billboard that keeps you in touch with Brunswick. If you have an item to appear on Community Billboard, please write Community Billboard, care of the City of Brunswick, 4095 Center Road, Brunswick.
Welcome to another edition of Speaking of Books, furnished as a service of Reader's Digest condensed books. I'm Robin Bergstrom. Novelist Belva Plain has attracted an enthusiastic following of readers with a colorful parade of bestsellers, starting with the moving love story Evergreen, seen later in a TV movie, and winding up with her current bookstore super hit, The Golden Cup. Like all of Belva Plain's earlier novels, the new one paints a searing portrait of a family caught in a crucial period in history. The action starts at the close of the last century and culminates with the coming of the Great War, which the men who fought it and the loved ones they left behind were told would end all wars. Belva Plain has long been fascinated by the relation of people to their times. She and I talked in a recent interview about some of the events touched upon in The Golden Cup, which appears in a special illustrated edition in the current volume of Reader's Digest condensed books. Here's what we talked about. The Roth family is indeed, two families in your book are totally torn apart by the advent of World War I. Want to explain why?
One of the things that Henny and her husband and her ilk type of person was concerned about was world peace. And as I said, people didn't expect another war, but there were some who studied things below the surface, and they feared the coming of another war, and of course, as events proved, they were right. Now, on the other hand, there was a group in England, and Henny's son went to England and sort of drank up everything they had to impart. And they had a romantic idea that war would be a great adventure, that people needed it for manliness, heroism, strength. It seems to us very childish, but it's true. If you read much that was written in those days, they looked forward to the war. There were poems written about, now the great hour has come. And so you had this split in the family that was really very painful.
But maybe that perception of war was colored by the fact that war was of a different type than we know it today. I mean, it was a lot more hand-to-hand combat. In fact, in one portion of the book, you have Henny giving a speech to a group of people about the changes in armaments.
Of course.
How do you think that factored in?
Oh, very, very greatly, because they still had, these people, like Henny's son, had a King Arthur's Knights round table idea of person-to-person valor and heroism. You know, you're fighting for a good cause and you defeat the enemy. But little did they know that how impersonal it would be, that at that time cannon would be fired and you would kill someone whom you had never even seen, and that the slaughter would be by the hundreds and hundreds of thousands in one or two battles alone.
Do you think most people in that time, at the end of World War I, believed that it was the war to end all wars?
Yes, I do. Well, again, with the exception of those who fought for peace and fought for the League of Nations and the World Court, but most people thought, oh, well, this can't ever happen again. President Wilson said it was the war to end wars. And I remember when the Second World War began that my own father was he was filled with horror and disbelief. He said, I can't imagine that. How could I imagine that I would live through another world war? And he was not alone.
Are we going to get to meet any of these new characters in the Golden Cup in a further novels, I should say?
Yes, it's the first of a trilogy.
Oh, wonderful. There's the answer to the question.
But of course, each one will be read separately. In other words, each will stand alone so that you can read any one without having read the preceding one.
Terrific. Readers who haven't yet fallen under the spell of Belva Plain, as well as tried and true fans of the author, will be mesmerized by her new novel about a family struggling to survive the turbulence of World War I. Remember the title, The Golden Cup. Now this is Robin Bergstrom saying goodbye for this edition of Speaking of Books, furnished by Reader's Digest Condensed Books. Hope you'll join us again soon for our next report on books you'll want to read and remember.
Well, there's no doubt about it. Books are a great way to get away from it all, and even a way to look into the past as things were in the olden days. And if you want to relive the olden days for yourself, you might want to take a trip to the old country at Busch Gardens in Virginia. Stay tuned.
It started the first time most of us looked at a map, or read a storybook, or saw an old movie. That sense of wonder and awe at what was across the ocean. Those countries whose names evoke images of castles and knights, chalets and wineries, quaint villages and pastoral countrysides. What were the people like that lived there? Were they like us? How did they dress? What did they eat and drink? What sort of things did they make? And what did they do to have fun? So you kept looking, but the storybook lands across the sea seemed further away than ever. Yet the sense of wonder still remained. About what it would be like to walk down narrow streets through an ageless Italian village, relax at the plaza adorned with classical statues. The red-tiled roofs and plastered walls smiled contentedly under the Mediterranean sun. And you share the cool shade of a Roman archway with elaborate reliefs and ornamental columns. But even as time went on, your curiosity remained. The sight of a suit of armor would send your imagination cantering over the bridge of a medieval castle, under the guard tower's watchful eyes, and into a world of pageantry and ceremony, marching by with banners flying, an ancient festival of medieval fun. Or the sound of bells chiming in the clock tower would transport you to the town square of a charming Elizabethan hamlet, strolling along quaint shops lining cobblestone streets. Old English signs hang near leaded glass windows and luxuriant flower boxes. Merchants, minstrels, guards, and tradesmen all go about their business beneath buildings of half-timber construction. And you stand dwarfed beside a magnificent draft animal. But your inquisitive spirit remained unsatisfied, and it only took a look at a German beer stein. And you're with a couple thousand of your closest friends inside a Bavarian-style fest house. Jolly Burgermeisters celebrate at the long tables, and traditionally dressed folk dancers seem to sing and dance like characters on a glockenspiel. The throng feasts on a wealth of German food and drink, and all appear as happy as the decorative frescoes that celebrate above ornamental woodwork. After a while, it seemed the day would never come when you would see any of those faraway places for yourself. To sit in the sun on the left bank in a small French cafe, watching the passers-by as you sample some of the local delicacies, whiling away the afternoon amid the graceful simplicity of the provincial architecture. But now the old countries were never so close, because everything you've just seen is right here in America. It's Busch Gardens, the old country in historic Williamsburg, Virginia. Eight faithful reconstructions of English, French, German, and Italian settings from different eras in history. Visitors are always impressed by the enormous attention paid to detail. Lights both inside and out radiate with authenticity. Every doorway has its own unique latch handle, door pull, hinges, or gate. Everything from the windows on the shops to the signs that hang above them, to even the chimneys on the roofs, has been painstakingly constructed to be functional, authentic, and aesthetically pleasing. But there's more to Busch Gardens than just a visual experience. For the youngsters, there are special fun areas where they can frolic in exciting but safe games and rides. Or there's the children's zoo, filled with gentle llamas, goats, and baby animals you can pet. Then if you get tired of walking, why not relax on a peaceful cruise up the Rhine River? Or chug along amid plush accommodations on the Balmoral Castle locomotive. Take a jaunty drive in a 1913 Stutz Bearcat. Or travel conveniently from country to country in our futuristic Sky Ride. And for those of you who want a little more excitement, it's a dazzling array of roller coasters, carousels, and thrilling rides, like the Loch Ness Monster, one of the world's biggest roller coasters, or the Big Bad Wolf, hanging suspended from an overhead track as you hurtle past church steeples and weave in and out through a Bavarian village. In all, there are 36 rides to challenge young and old alike. And after so much excitement, you're bound to work up an appetite. And whether you're in a sidewalk cafe or our fabulous fest house, you'll sample authentic food from all the countries represented. From veal parmesan and spaghetti to blueberry cheesecake, bratwurst to black forest cake or delicious barbecue. Busch Gardens offers a culinary selection to satisfy the most Epicurean of tastes, including imported delicacies from Italy and France. After you've eaten your fill, digest it watching any one of the wide variety of live performances taking place daily on stages and in the streets. The spectacular lineup of shows feature top young performers from all over the country. And where can you stay when you visit Busch Gardens? Among the many fine accommodations nearby, you'll find the fabulous King's Mill on the James. Enjoy luxurious accommodations that sit astride 2 championship 18-hole golf courses, pro shop, tennis, and restaurant, all situated along the scenic James River. Convenient to Busch Gardens, historic Williamsburg, Yorktown, and Jamestown. So stop dreaming about faraway places. See them right here at Busch Gardens, the old country, in Williamsburg, Virginia.
And that's all for this week. Be sure to tune in next week for another edition of Brunswick Today. I'm Jeff Neidert.